Satterfield. I'm a writer, producer, director. My background has been primarily in documentary and reality, lifestyle mostly. And I'm now moving into scripted production, and I'm really here in my capacity as the Producers Guild Committee Chair for the Women's Impact Network.
My name is Rachel Winter. I'm a producer. I have a movie starting in Atlanta on Monday. Very exciting. Produced Dallas Buyers Club. I have not produced a movie in Georgia since like 1997, so I'm very excited to be back and happy to be here.
My name is Lisa Farrell. I am the executive in charge of production / executive producer for Resolution Media and Entertainment in Atlanta. And I am also the community and industry relations chair for the Georgia Production Partnership, one of the foremost associations for the production industry in the state of Georgia. And the way filming is going, probably for the Southeast. I've been in production, some form of production for the past 15 years here in the Southeast, and that's it.
Hello, I'm Sherry Mann Stewart, and I describe myself as filmmaker, SAG-AFTRA actor, writer, director, producer, activist, and mom. And I've been a professional in the industry for over 35 years, spent most of my early decades as a SAG-AFTRA actor. I was mentored by the wonderful Stella Adler, and then went on to some amazing teachers after that, and have worked in film, television, theater for a long time. But then about maybe 10 years ago, or 6 years ago, I don't know, I realized that in the new development, how the things were going, that I really should start creating some more projects for myself, and then my son's growing up who wanted to be in the business too, so I started doing more producing, writing, directing. I'm thrilled that here at the festival I have a film showing tomorrow in the 5 o'clock block in the Georgia Shorts block. It's called Heartland, and it is my directorial debut on film, and it stars Tanaya Cleveland, who you just saw on the last panel, so I'm very proud of that. I also am an associate producer, or maybe co-producer, I don't know what it ended up being, of a feature film, Italian-US co-production feature film that grew out of contacts that my sons and I made at the Macon Film Festival. Then they brought us to Italy last year to shoot a feature, and it is receiving its premiere at Turin, the Turin Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, in the beginning of May, and we just got an email last night that they may bring us over for that.
Yeah.
And that's called Bullied to Death. And then I'm also excited to be co-producer, co-writer of the new web series Skin Deep, the series, and we are shooting that pilot this May in Atlanta.
Hi, I'm Fran Burst-Taranella, and since this is the Women's Impact Network, I was the first woman to graduate from the University of Texas Film School as a director. So, needless to say, I ran into a few barriers. I grew up with theater and all the visual arts, and was in a film course in one summer in college, and just realized, oh, I want to be a director. This is 60s, did not know women weren't supposed to do that. So I just went about doing it, and have been a part of the Atlanta production community since '73. At that point I was the new camera girl. So, and then I was the boom girl. So I always did all the technical crafts, and so I built quite a career doing a lot of marketing, branding materials, a lot of corporate, a lot of work for nonprofits. And I always would get hired to do the funny stuff, which was great. And so I have a production company, which I started in '81. And at the same time, my production partner at the time and I were doing a lot of indie documentaries. We had a couple of things on ABC. We had a piece on PBS. My thesis film actually ran on PBS before it was PBS. It was the '70s. And so I had this whole indie film career in addition to beginning to do corporate and things like that. And so we were in all the festivals. We never got to go because we were sending film prints. By the time you paid $400 for a film print and $200 for an entry fee and $100 to get it there, it was amazing. So our films were screened all over. So now I've had the company for years, and I've done over 700 productions. And I was on the faculty at the Art Institute of Atlanta for 14 years. I stopped 2 years ago, year and a half ago. But I decided finally to do a feature. Tanaya is here, and I think April Billingsley was on the earlier panel. She stars in the feature. It's the 12 Lives of Sissy Carlisle, and April plays Sissy Carlisle. And it was actually, what I've realized is the film was made by me and 70 millennials. Because I was teaching at the time, and the writer was one of my former students. The editor is a former student. Both DPs were former students. I was fortunate to have a lot of industry friends who came on board so that we could have industry professionals doing a lot of roles so people could learn. But it was really like a giant kind of internship, I suppose. And it was way too ambitious for an indie feature, which is what makes it fun. So tonight I'm not the least bit afraid of your film. And it's micro budget, which is Hollywood speak for not much money. The writer and his family put in the first money. My husband and I put in the second money. We did a small Indiegogo campaign. We just started submitting to festivals. We've got 3 rejections under our belt, which is great. Now we can move on. But we've got the film out at about 12 different submissions right now. So it will hopefully be playing in Georgia eventually, but we're doing the festival circuit. And I'm now relearning indie distribution. We were real good at it in the 80s, so we'll see how I do now.
So I guess the basis of this conversation is kind of the changing nature of production and kind of the statistics. Like everybody has seen a lot of the articles about how many women are behind the camera. I think it's less than 14% of films on average are directed by women.
It's between 7 and 9.
It's a 7 and 9, but I think overall, like if you try
And indie, it's maybe a little more.
That's what I'm saying. If you include indies, it's like even then when you include those, I know coming from the film festival world, it was always like for documentary films, it was amazing. About 50% of films are directed by women, but as soon as we got to the narrative features, that number dropped way, way down. So one of my first questions is just about building that kind of network. You know, how is that changing between producers and directors and women? Like, how are you guys seeing that changing now?
Well, I think it's not changing fast enough, but that's one of the reasons why we have panels like this. With the way that the industry has changed and the way that costs have dropped because the equipment costs have dropped, and there's a lot more channels, there's a lot more distribution avenues than there used to be. So there's a lot more ways to get work out there, but ultimately for a lot of those things you still need money. What I think a lot of us have decided to do is to stop waiting for permission and even stop waiting for the money. You know, I think the most important thing you can do from film school on is to build your connections. You've always got to have some kind of real work to pay to support your development habit. But I think it's a very expensive habit. But your network of friends and coworkers and professionals is the most important network you have. And I think the best thing you can do is help people with their work, so they in turn will help with your work. You know, it's because it's like betting on horses. Something is going to, you know, if you keep doing the work, something's going to break through.
I totally agree with everything that you just said, and I think that there are more and more great examples of women following their instincts about material, breaking down some walls that, you know, Catherine Bigelow is an incredible example as a female director. You know, she does muscular films, she does films that, you know, traditionally would be done by men. And I think that the relationships are incredibly important, but I also think really sticking with what you want to do, what material is speaking to you, so that it feels genuine, honest, organic, I think is also very helpful. And, you know, and I think it sounds very cliche, but you really just can't give up, ever. It's helpful too.
It's exhausting.
I agree with everything Susan said. These two women I've known for years, and we bounce idea after idea off of each other. And I've told you I'm an executive producer for a company, and that's my day job. But right now I'm working on a documentary with someone that I've known for years. I'm working on content production with someone I've known for years. On the way here, Susan and I were talking about things that we're working on that are outside of what our day jobs are, that feed our development habit, because our networking is what helps us as women know that we're heading in the right direction. And Susan and I were also having a conversation that women are hard on ourselves because as women, we carry our entire gender, and if we make a mistake, it's like, well, that's why women aren't giving money, is because you can't do this, you can't do that. But when men make a mistake, it's like, oh, that's okay, you know, better luck next time, sport. So that's why, networking is always good, because we keep each other propelled and moving on. And I can guarantee you, every woman on this panel is working on something outside of what she will tell you that her day job is.
I certainly agree with everything that's been said. I'm trying to think what else is there to say. But from the perspective of, if there are folks here in the audience, particularly young women who are maybe looking for words of support or inspiration from the panel, I would say that, yes, we all need to support each other. We all need to reach hands out to each other. But also the men here in the audience, please don't put any of this in a category of, oh, well, those are women, they'll help each other. Those are women's organizations, those are women's projects. No. The stories that we have to tell are human stories. They're universal stories. If it happens to have a woman director, writer, and stars, that doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to you. Just as we have spent decades watching a lot of stories about men, we've still found things that we can relate to. But now I do feel like it is our time. I've been, as I said, in this business for a long time, and it feels like there's momentum happening right now, and momentum locally. And, we can all help each other. And, even if, like we had an Indiegogo campaign recently that's over, but we still have a way on our website to contribute. Literally just $5, $10 to help. When you hear that women whom you know are working on projects, give us a hand, send in $5. I've done that for years with all my friends, even if that's all I can afford at the time, but support new, unique voices and new stories, and, and help us sort of increase the diversity in all the ways, both behind the camera and on screen, gender-wise, racially, ethnically, in all these ways. It's just time. Now's the time to do it.
I don't have a day job. I quit it.
So a question I have is,
But
how much?
I want to say one thing about women.
Oh, go ahead, Fran. Sorry, Fran.
Well, we're half the population, in some places more. And when Catherine Bigelow did The Hurt Locker, first of all, she won the Oscar. I'd been waiting. What have we been waiting? Why have we been waiting 80 years? Because I wasn't born. But that was the first woman. Only the four others had been nominated. And there's not a woman winning the Oscar for directing right now. Thank God you're producing, because that's bringing a vision to everything. And when you look and see when it's a really good balance of producers, you just know you're probably going to see a movie that is pretty amazing. But what has hit me, and I think it was partly the Oscars this year, the lack of diversity in every way, in the recognition of people. And women have a different way of looking at the world. And I guess I've been about that all along. And when people hired me, I think they hired me seeing that. And I think our actors, you get hired because hopefully you're not just representing a type. you are bringing a character to something. So I guess the mission for the rest of my career is to really enable my voice to be heard, but I love to find people's voices, and that's what I like to bring to the screen. And I think if we're open to many voices, you know, I think entertainment is how we learn about life, and obviously you think about theater and paintings on caves. You know, we've always been a visually and a storytelling species, and I feel like the world would be I'll be optimistic, will be an infinitely more interesting and hopefully peaceful place as women take more and more leadership in the stories that we tell. So that's my mission. Yeah, I might have to sell donuts like it's you know what? I don't care.
So a question I have is like, speaking of diversity and other things, how much do you feel like
Thank you so much.
with the dawn of Netflix and Hulu and kind of expanding niches that have kind of emerged over the last couple of years, you know, last 10, 15 years, not only even TV, mostly TV, but even in film, how have you seen that impact the types of stories that are being produced? Because I feel like if you look at, especially like on cable TV, so many more female-centric stories have been developed specifically because there are specific channels, and not beyond just OWN or anything else, just age-wise.
Well, it's Shonda Rhimes.
Yeah, diversity-wise. So how have you seen that
She's
impact the types of stories we're seeing?
I think, you know, television is still light years ahead of the big feature film in terms of diversity. I mean, television still has a way to go, but just in terms of seeing more realistic roles for women and you know, cultural diversity, it's why I'm attracted to working in television actually more than feature films, because of the ability to not just bring those characters but develop them over time. So, you know, what we really need is, and to just talk about the market, because it's, in a way, I feel like Atlanta has a chance to be a different market because we're an emerging market. You know, LA's been established a long time, New York's been established a long time. One of the PGA members from LA who came to speak to us at a PGA meeting, you know, looked out into the audience and was like, wow, you know, because we had diversity. And she said, our LA meetings never look like this. So, you know, in the South, we have a lot more diversity than, not more than New York, but I think there's something about being Southern that makes us extremely aware of our past and our present, sadly, and how much difficulty we have sometimes, you know, integrating all of us together. And so we have an opportunity to, if we really make an effort to be that market that is more inclusive. And I may be going off topic here, but when you're in a meeting, and this goes for everybody, diversity is everybody. It's also white guys, you know. So we're you know, we need all of our voices. But when you're in a meeting and you realize that you're going down a path that's not inclusive, or you know, you're not considering the woman director, you're not considering the woman gaffer, you're not considering a minority to potentially be cast in just a regular role. You know, I think it's up to all of us to raise awareness and say, this is how we should be doing this. And a lot of times we are the only woman in the room. I mean, it happens, especially in your professional paying job. A lot of times you might be the only woman in the room, and then I feel like it's incumbent on us to go, hey, let's think about this, you know?
You know, I try actually to not focus as much because I'm just interested in telling the stories that I want to tell, and I'm lucky, very blessed to be able to do it. I don't take that for granted. I, of course, get a kick out of it when I have this film that's starting on shooting on Monday, and I did. I walked into a meeting, and I'm the producer, and I'm a woman, and everybody else is in the room, and the transpo captain was like, "Oh, what do you do, sweetie?" Look, part of it is. I think that's a good thing. I don't think that just if you are the producer or if you are the boss, it's not important to make other people know that. It's just everyone should be able to do their best work, and it's actually better if nobody actually feels my presence. I actually think that is a good thing. But it is funny, of course. And in terms of content, because I always come back to content, and I do think there is probably a statistic that women drive box office sales. Women, I traditionally make the decision which movie are we going to go
About
see.
60%, I think.
And I think the TV business is fascinating. There are always surprises, and I don't think you can never be sure what audiences are going to come to your show. I think Boardwalk Empire we had a lot of surprises. Women were really watching that show. Very, it's violent. It's very male, and so I think women, you can't guess what we're going to like. You can't guess what we're going to want to make. What are we going to want to leave our husband and children to take that time away from our families to go dedicate our time to? And you can't pigeonhole us, and you can't guess, and people shouldn't try. And but I think we have to just keep banging that drum. It's all about the content. I'm lucky because we really are in a nice cycle of true stories. True stories are very in fashion to highlight them, to tell them, and I think that's where the diversity comes in, because people from tons of diverse backgrounds have incredibly fascinating, sometimes tragic, sometimes inspiring, but these stories are coming to the surface, and it's great time to be telling those stories. So I think for me, it's been more opportunities to be able to have a leg up trying to tell those stories as I do gravitate toward them.
One of the things that these different streaming mediums is doing is making it more democratic, because things like YouTube, I work for a company that is on its way to becoming part content creator, and we were pitching what we were hoping would become an episode that this network would buy, and one of the things that they had suggested to us is to break it up and to upload it to YouTube, see how many hits we get, and then come back to them after we saw if it were popular or not. So what these different mediums do is they, right away you can tell if somebody likes something or not. And that brings me back around to like an Issa Rae, who is not only she a woman, but she's a black woman, and she had a web series, Awkward Black Girl, and it was so popular that it was Shonda Rhimes took an interest in her, and so did HBO, and she got a development series with HBO off of that. So you see that women do pay attention, and women do drive, what is seen, what's purchased, and so do minorities. So I think that what it's done is it has democratized what's purchased, what's watched, and so I think that things like YouTube, Hulu, Netflix is a wonderful time right now to be a content creator, to be someone who is trying to sell something, if you know how to use these tools that we've been presented with.
And I would just piggyback on that and say that, for example, we chose to do a web series with Skin Deep rather than spend whatever time and money it would have taken us to get permission from studios and money from studios and this kind of thing. It just made it more accessible for several of us in Atlanta. I was brought onto the team, woman of my age who still has duties with family. I'm a sandwich generation. I have the parents with illness going on and needs. I have my sons with their needs. And yet I was brought in as the third person on the team, but as a woman with something to contribute. I've been contributing, bringing more female characters into it for one thing, but I have a lot of expertise, but I'm not necessarily at the point in my life that I can sit in a studio office for all day, every day. I have other things I've got to take care of, but because of the new media, we're doing it. We are creating a series and we're getting it out there, and people will see it. And of course, it would be lovely if someone with a lot of money sees it and picks it up, and we want as many people to see it as possible. We feel like we're addressing things in a unique way. However, it just has allowed us additional access that we normally would not have had. And I do believe that it's one way of sort of thinking creatively, which I think women, just by nature and by the roles that society often gives us, we have a lot of practice thinking creatively. And not only that, but things like the film that I have here right now was a film that I directed, produced for the 48 Hours. That allowed me to take an idea, or at least a group of people that wanted to create an idea together in 48 hours, get my crew, my SAG cast, and do it quickly in the time that my life allowed in that moment. And then now, director's cut, get it to festivals. So it's allowing these creative ways of getting things done rather than waiting for permission from men at the top of studios, perhaps.
Charles, I want to ask a question. How many people have a project they're developing or filming right now or getting ready to film? Y'all, how many people?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Stella, you should raise your hand. Stella's in on our project now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, we're cooking up a web series. There were just 5 of us. I knew Hannah, but we met all these women last week at the Atlanta Film Festival. They're actors. Well, I'm a director and a producer, and I said, well, we just have to do something. So we're going to do a really cool improv kind of a piece with different characters at different times. I have no idea where it's going. But I got to sit in last week on a Seed and Spark. It's a newer indie crowdfunding. These people are geniuses. Write this down now. Seed and Spark. I am not their representative. They are not paying me. You go to their website and you can find the most amazing stuff about how to do a campaign. We did Indiegogo, which I loved, but I want to do a Seed and Spark campaign for my film for distribution, because when you become part of their, it's like really an indie film studio, that there's people that can help you at every stage, and I think it's going to, and they may not be the only player doing it, but I think it's going to completely change where content can be coming from. Because people are all over the country. I think you're right. We're uniquely situated in Georgia because we've had a film industry here since the 70s, an active film industry with a ton. I still work with people that I traveled with. Well, Susan's husband, he was one of the first people I met. I filmed in the mid-70s. He was a camera guy out in the middle of the Stone Mountain Lake at 2 in the morning in February. We got to be fast friends because that was when I was the boom girl. And but I think it's just amazing that we can actually do it. We don't have to buy film. We don't have to have extensive stuff. And I think there's always, I think those big studio projects, we always want to do those. But I think right now we can put things out there and just see what happens.
Okay, and it's kind of, it has a thought in my head about something you said earlier about the stories you want to develop specifically. I think one thing that's kind of changed, and tell me if I'm wrong, is content. Usually it was like if you're just going to make something for a female audience, you're going to get a female-centric character. But I feel like because the niches, people realize, oh, like women like sci-fi, so like we're developing a sci-fi project, but we're not even concerned so much about like, is it female-centric? It's more of like, how do we create this for this audience that is hungry for that? So have you kind of seen that change, that shift of like, it's not just like who are casting, it's also the genre expanding all of it. Because even I think of the second Magic Mike film, the first one was all very women-centric, but the second one they realized, oh, we have this huge gay audience that we can go after, and almost the entire cast went on tour and like danced and went to clubs.
How did they not see that?
Yeah. It's all second realizing like,
A woman would have seen that.
So I just wonder what your thoughts are on that mind shift. Anybody?
Yeah, well, I think that, I think what's happening is that the audience is now driving the studios. The studios used to try to drive the audience with, and this is a good time for me to plug, there's what the Producers Guild did, some women in the Producers Guild, they kept, and these are women like Lydia Dean Pilcher, who does some very big projects, and when they would go to studios with the stories they wanted to tell, they were getting very frustrated because the studio heads were saying things like, yeah, you know, women won't go see it. Women aren't the ones that really drive going to the theater. They basically had this mindset that they needed to produce for men, and mostly young men. And, we won't find an audience for this or that. And so they decided, you know what, we've heard these myths for a really long time, but they don't resonate with us. This is not what we hear from our friends and family and other people. So they commissioned Stanford and the Gina Davis Institute and all these other places to do stats, do studies, actually find out what is the truth, what are the stats. And they came up with what is called the Ms. Factor Toolkit. And I'm going to give you, I wish I had enough of these left to pass around, but I'm going to give you right now the website, because there's a downloadable document that gives you stats, and it's actually to help you sell your project. So you can go into a funder, an investor, anybody with money, a distributor, and if you can be armed with these facts, so that if you run up against these myths, you can go, actually, here's what Stanford discovered. So if you go, it's called the Ms. Factor, ms.factor, F-A-C-T-O-R, and it's producersguild.org/WIN_toolkit. And they also have PGA Women has a Facebook page, and there's just a lot of information on there. So in order to be armed with facts about women will watch sci-fi, women will, women do want to see superheroes and, a lot of other things. It's a great resource.
Oh, and I did this yesterday. We passed a pad around, and I'm more than willing, of course you're going to get propaganda about my film, but I'm more than willing to, well, really, if you don't self-promote, but if y'all want to sign up, I'll be happy to send you guys the links. And the Women in Film LA also did a great study with Sundance Institute. So, what we're planning to do, yes, take those numbers and say, hey, there's where the money is.
Fran,
Let's
give
just,
him the pencil.
well,
I happen to have one, but.
well, you can take my pencil and run that around. It's got a superhero or sci-fi guy or something.
You notice how women just don't get things done. Fran did say, is there someone who could please do this for me? She just got up and did it.
It's an interactive thing, and I want to know what you think. You want to know what are the resources, and we can continue a dialogue, really.
Well, it's funny because at the Atlanta Film Festival, we were having that conversation. It was actually based off the conversation, the panel you were on about diversity and monetizing diversity. And I was talking to a lot of younger female filmmakers, and to me, I said the one thing you guys can't afford to do is you guys can't afford to be humble. I think I see way too many young women are and it's not they're meek. That's not what I'm saying, is that they're too much about giving credit to a lot of other people. And I'm like, you're too young to give your credit away yet.
Yeah.
When you did something awesome, do it. And the same thing with Fran, you just get up and just do it.
Right.
Because as a guy, it's easy for me, because I'm a guy, I can do that. But I think more young women, you can't be humble. So that's just.
Well, in my generation, it was worse.
Right. I was just going to say, I'm too old to be humble, because I spent decades being humble, and then I kept seeing men, often, who had much less experience and training and knowledge than I did, and they would claim, oh, I know how to do that, and then they do it. I'm like, okay, wait, And so finally, I think I just got it. This is not a business that one can afford to be humble in, and certainly not at my age. And so now I've just started to say, hey, I can be on a panel, and I can direct a film, and I can do these things, because I have been doing it for all these years. I just haven't claimed it.
Well, and I think it's power. I discovered early on when I was doing a lot of corporate work that I would, if I lost a bid to people, sometimes you'd be in a room and I watched what the guys did, and some of my clients were really good coaches, and I noticed that all the guys said no, they didn't listen to anything anybody said about a project. We were doing a pitch, and then they just said no problem. And I thought, they didn't even write anything down. They didn't even know what the hell they're talking about. Now, I am way ahead of them because I wrote all this stuff down. I actually know how to do it. I know people that can do it. And I was just ripping it up, getting projects, because they just said no problem. So I always say no problem. Now, I can actually back it up. How does that figure into Hollywood, though?
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's tough because I don't want to be known as a female filmmaker. I want to be known as a filmmaker.
Right.
And so it's complicated. There are moments where I feel like I don't want to say, listen to me, look at me, I'm a woman doing this, but listen to me and look at me because I'm talented.
Because you're good,
And so there's an argument for not overly shining light. I think, maybe what you're saying is, don't be humble and that kind of thing. I think women by nature are problem solvers and multitaskers, and I think, you use all of your strengths, but anybody would and anybody should. And so I think for young women as well, I'm a person, I'm a filmmaker, I'm an artist, I'm a mom, all these things, and I'm really proud to be. I didn't mean to lump myself in the young women category there, by the way. That came out wrong. It's okay. I was once. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's tricky.
Well, one of the things you are going to be known as a woman filmmaker, you've got no choice in that. Like, I don't want to be known as the black producer in every room I walk into, but I am.
Right.
So I carry that, and I just do the best job that I can do, and just move on with it. I mean, you shoulder that. So
That's
it's not like, when people say, ask you the question, so what I want to be known as that, I mean, you've got really no choice in that.
That's right. And
Until they
proud of
start
that.
asking you, you just have to be so good until they start asking you about the work that you're doing.
Right. It is, a friend of mine he's moved into politics from Hollywood, moved into politics, and he's brilliant, and he is the one who explained to me, so on the side of politics, you can't change policy without changing culture.
Okay, yes.
And so I think that can be a pervasive idea. And so I think slowly but surely, hopefully over time, women will, it starts with us, we find our voice, we find our strength, we find our support, and we march forward. And hopefully over time, it is, you walk into a room and the transfer captain doesn't say, hey sweetie, what are you doing?
I don't know, that may never go
And that
away.
may never go away,
Well, I just say,
and keep your sense of humor.
oh my God, yeah.
There was before we had this panel, there was a debate because we many of us know a producer who was saying, there shouldn't be a women's panel. There should be women on every panel, and I agree. There should be women on every panel.
And Jeremiah Ware, you did a great job of getting
Yes,
them
you did. And diversity on every panel. But I said to her, when we have parity, when this is not an issue anymore, there won't need to be a women's panel. But until there is some, more equality, we have to have space to talk about it because that's the only way it's going to change.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna open it up to questions.
wow.
Start here, and then I'll work back that way.
I'm here, I'm not in the film industry, but I support and, inspire or help a lot of people that friends are. But
Thank you.
Fran, if you've worked with that many millennials on that project, that should be a documentary within that.
I'll concur with that. We should have behind the scenes of how the film was made.
Well, I didn't set out to do that, but my
But
son's a
it would've been an
millennial.
interesting
My son's
documentary.
31. My daughter-in-law's a millennial,
Right.
and I guess teaching. It is funny, but I embrace it because I think.
Well, there are more
It's just so much energy. My God, I'd be a fool not to enjoy that.
So, and my question is driving toward the fact that I believe women can tell stories beautifully. Harper Lee is still my favorite writer.
Oh my God.
So, but we're living in a time of technology where I go to the movies now with people that are in that millennial age. They cannot go to their phone during the movie without checking in, texting, or whatever. With movies that are content driven, what do you see in the future with a generation that's coming up that are so tethered to their technology that they can't truly engage and maybe follow through those stories of content? Do you see that as a growing problem? There's a major chain right now that's considering showing movies in a place where people can text during the movies.
Wow.
Which to me totally defeats the purpose of why you're there. So as creators, how do you see this as far as affecting the future of?
But we're used to doing that with the TV, though. Everybody's been encouraging interactivity. You're on all the other stuff. I'm doing it all the time, nonstop. I still am watching the show. I'm totally engaged, but I'm always got sometimes 3 or 4 devices going.
So that's what
And
it
I'm
is.
not a millennial, I mean, I just do that. And I don't know, I think with film, I'm sure that's a huge conversation, because it is a group experience when you're together in a theater.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful that we
I
all
can't wrap
put our
my brain
devices
around it because
away.
it disturbs my,
I hate that idea.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah, I
hate
don't
that
like
idea.
that for
I think our
film.
job is to really just, again, start with the stories that we want to tell, that we think are interesting, not try to guess what everyone is going to be engaged by. I think, there are amazing filmmakers like, Martin Scorsese, who is so obsessed with film preservation, and our job is to, it's not just about what moving forward, but also the films that have come before and that have created the foundation for filmmaking, and making sure that young people at least have the opportunity to see it, experience it. The pacing of it is so much slower. So for example, I have young kids, and I'll show them Lady and the Tramp. It's like molasses because the pacing of it, as opposed to even The Little Mermaid, which is whatever a generation later, and even that is a little bit faster. And so so much information is flying at them all the time, that how are they going to learn to watch and appreciate films that move at a different pace? Because if it's slow, they're going to pick up their phone and they're going to do something.
But I'd also say this is an opportunity though, because I think when you see shows like Scandal and everything else, I think I tend to see men tend to be broadcasters, and I think women tend to be sharers. And technology allows women to gather around a show and to talk with each other and have these amazing conversations. So I think, yes, it's a kind of a challenge, but I also think that's why we're seeing more content, because they're starting to realize those extra things they can do, and they can draw these people in. Guys, it's just much more difficult to get them in that lane and to get on board and to stick with a show and to create a community out of it. So much more individualistic. So I think it's actually an opportunity, and that's why we're seeing more content.
Well, but culturally, I think the question, I think, is not anyone you can answer, is can we actually stop all that stuff and just experience, whether it's a piece of music, a concert, whether it's theater, whether it's a conversation with somebody. My husband and I are always counting. We'll watch, if we go to a restaurant, we'll look around, we'll go, okay, we'll see somebody, and me especially, I say, how long before one of them's on the phone? Oh my God, we were in a really nice restaurant. I mean, we were the only people in the restaurant that weren't on their phone, and I'm thinking, well, what about those people you're with? But I do it too, so.
I think it's gonna affect
It's just-
content.
it's
Right.
Well, I think, Rachel, I think you're absolutely right.
So what is?
I just believe
The
it's gonna affect
content has to just
content.
come be authentic.
I think there are always going to be people who are driving forward on the technology side, and that, of course, there's a movie coming out. I don't even know the name, Henry or something, where the whole perspective.
Hardcore Henry.
Hardcore Henry.
Right.
Okay. We're here. This is happening. And there are going to be some people who really want that and are excited by it. But I think that I can only speak for myself. I'm never going to make that movie. I'm probably not going to see them. I might try to see it so I can understand what the experience is, but I'm not going to see it or try to understand it from the perspective of I have to be with the time. I have to make sure that I understand it so I could be current. I'm still going to turn around and go back to the movie that took me 14 years to get made.
Thank you.
And there are going to be people like me.
Lucas?
Well, okay, I was just going to say that I was thinking how it has affected our writing of Skin Deep, and it has definitely affected, because we're doing, we're breaking that 1-hour pilot into 8 episodes, 8-ish minutes each, whatever. So that's a different way of writing it and thinking about it, and yet I don't think it's to the detriment, because what we've done is we are going very deep into these characters, and we just got this amazing, thank you, review, from The Blacklist, where they give you feedback on your script, and they said some great things about how complex our characters are and how deep we're going and how different it is. So it's affected us, but I don't think it's to the detriment. I think that we are imagining that people might be watching it on different devices, and therefore, or just, their attention spans might be shorter, but we're not letting the story stop there. We have these arcs that continue for a very long time, but just in smaller bites.
Interesting.
So,
I feel like we are in the essence of your ability to follow a different pacing or to follow art and to understand the different elements. I think we're sitting right in the middle of one of the answers. We're in a theater right now. And this is an art form that is still there, that is definitely viable, and I think a wonderful place to continue to show, especially young audiences, that there is a different pace, and there is an environment where you can sit and be only engaged in that, in the story that's happening, and I think it's just a good place to start.
Lucas, and then I'll come back to Hannah, and then come back over here.
It's like a comment / question. I think, to your point about whether there should be a women's panel on this, I think that absolutely should be, as long as there is a discrepancy in terms of women versus men. It has to be brought to the awareness. We have a lot of hidden sexism in the world that even us progressives have sort of swallowed, and we're not even realizing that we're being sexist. You know, women cannot be bishops in certain religions, and we sort of accept that. That's like crazy stuff, right? And it's the thought that I had with, President Obama being elected, representing the African American community, to really empower that community. And I think the time we're in now, where it's likely potential, I'm keeping politics out of this, but that we might have a female president come November, I think hypothetically could really affect how women view themselves in the future, regardless of politics. And I wonder, do you think such a thing would have an influence on women, or is it just, it doesn't really matter whether it's a male or female president of the U.S.?
I live in New York, and I was lucky enough to go to dinner with some women from NBC News, and I was too terrified to speak because I just feel like a moron next to these women, but I did a lot of listening. And what I found is that there's still sort of a young woman in all of us that really wants to see what the world looks like with a female president of the United States of America. And
I would agree with that.
yeah, because I think things have been kind of messed up for a long time, and women have, somebody on the panel said, a different vantage point, and we approach things in life in a different way, and I think that could be incredibly exciting just based on that. And then, of course, there's all the other things. She happens to be the most experienced person in the race. She happens to have a lot going for her. I think also it comes back to also what's in your DNA. What are you made to do? What are you born to do? And out of all the people, it's a fucking circus. Let's be honest. It's ridiculous. And when you look at the Clintons are an example of people who at least are following what they were clearly born to do in their DNA, in the fabric of who they are, public service, years of experience. I mean, say what you will about all the other stuff, but there is something for that, and that to me is also inspiring. I'm just carving out that as an example.
and well, I was just going to say, I describe myself as an activist also, and my filmmaking, my acting, my art in all my life is part of my activism and politics. I think that we have the opportunity as artists and filmmakers and storytellers to affect the world in both small and huge ways, and that is exactly why I choose to do what I do and what draws me to projects. And yes, as an actor, I do take roles not in things that offend me, but in things that maybe I don't believe in quite as much. I'll work on the big studio things as an actor, get the big bucks that I can then put towards my own projects or my friends' projects, So I think it's a huge, I consider it a responsibility, actually.
Hannah?
So Karen Kusama, who did Girl Fights, one of the greatest movies, everyone definitely goes to Girl Fights.
Yeah.
But then did Aeon Flux, and it didn't hit. It wasn't big. I saw it, I don't think anybody else did. Well, now she's coming out with The Invitation, and I'm really excited to see it, but there's been a lot of buzz around her about failure, especially as a woman. Inevitably, it was that, well, this woman's film didn't do well, so women can't do well as directors. So I want to see what your responses are to that, if you've experienced any sort of failure along those lines and how you've overcome it. In so much the capacity of being inevitably a representative of your gender, race, age, something like that.
I know for me, certainly having gone through, I've made a handful of movies, and Dallas Buyers Club was an example of a film that, that's that lightning in a bottle thing, and that little indie that goes all the way, and it was the most incredible thing, and it was a very personal story to me. My uncle had been on ACT, died of AIDS, and it was a story I really wanted to tell, and but we were totally, my female producing partner and I, we would be literally having a conversation where you think you're on an alternate plane of reality, where it is not a good idea until a man says it. You are sitting there saying the exact thing. No one can hear you. And you've heard me. I'm not particularly focused on this general issue, but it's very real.
Yeah.
And you just keep going. But there are these moments where you feel like you're failing in real time. You feel like, and you go home and your kids are pissed at you, and you feel like you're failing all over. But it's crazy because there's just success in keeping on.
Yes.
There is just success in it, and that's, I don't know, I feel like maybe that's a female burden, but it just doesn't matter. And it shouldn't matter to Karen, and it might be harder to get her next job, but she's so incredibly talented, and I think there are enough people who really feel like, who gives a shit, you know what I mean? She's talented, she is a woman, and I think more and more women are going to be handed the reins for sci-fi movies, and more women are going to be handed the reins. Horror is a huge genre driven by female viewership, and again, there is success even in the failures. You just keep going.
But the fact she's got another film, so often
Yeah.
you woman fails and that's the end of it. I was reading a statistic from Sundance, and this was like maybe a year ago. They'd done a research project on all the women who directed films that got in at Sundance, and to see what happened next. And then they wrote this sentence that said, absolutely nothing.
Wow.
So that, I think, actually charged the people forward, because now there are so many women, you're talking about their sophomore project, their second film.
But so that many men go into director jail way faster because there's simply more of them, and they do one movie, you never hear from
Yep,
them.
it's just because there's numbers.
But don't you wish that you could cast a guy who looks like Lucas to go in and pitch your film? Because sometimes it looks like wear the backwards, wear the baseball cap, look, it's a central casting.
Yeah, you got it.
Send him in to pitch your film. It's like if there was a way to do that as a control group, and but you can't because you're pitching the same person. But still, I'm always curious, what if I look like that?
Yeah.
What would happen?
Yeah.
I think we got a documentary.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we got a documentary.
Or reality show.
I have a couple degrees in psychology, which helped me a lot in this business and this life. And there are studies that are done about communication differences between genders. And so I really try to be a spokesperson in the room, whether it's me not being heard. How many times have I been in a group and I'll have an idea and I'll say it. It'll take me about 10 times probably for anyone to actually listen to me saying it, And so I do try to speak up also for other women or anyone in the room who's not being heard. I try to really keep my ears attuned to that person over in the corner who's a little more of an introvert, but they have a really good idea. And I'll say, guys, folks, can you listen? Can we hear what he has to say, what she has to say? So if we all kind of try to raise our own awareness of that, then maybe it's not just the loudest voices that will be heard, because they are not always saying the best things.
So gotta wrap this up. So I have one last question. I actually want to ask the same question I asked the acting panel. Pretend you're an actor. Is there a role that you would like to play, or a character you would like to be? I'm just curious.
Catherine Bigelow?
Honestly, I liked what and I've forgotten her name, but the actress who said she wanted to be the mafia maven.
Oh, Stella.
I love that. I think I could be a mafia maven.
Well, we just wrote that into our web
Southern
series.
mafia. Yeah.
Well, she's got 2 roles now. We're going to do that.
Jared McGuire.
Oh, good choice.
I'm a producer, I'm not an actor.
Metaphor.
I have not thought about it. I'm single-minded, no.
Well, my answer is always as an actor, but I'll say as producer, director, et cetera, the next one. The one I want to do is the next one. But also, just to plug, the next time you'll see me on screen, on the big screen as an actor, is this summer in a feature film called Table 19 that we shot last year in Atlanta, the Duplass brothers' newest project. So
Awesome.
I do have a supporting role in that, so come and see Table 19.
Okay, seriously, any role that Meryl Streep ever played? I mean, she just supersedes everything. You know, I mean, and there are other actors that do, but yeah.
All right, we'll give them a round of applause. Thank you guys.